the dominant reason of why we're looking at this. The City of Canton has weathered, I believe we have weathered this local economic downturn, this recession that we were facing. When you look at the income tax reductions, those dropped for the first 2.5 years that I was here. Every month it was lower than the prior year's equal month. And last summer, we actually had a month that was like about a few $100s more than the year before. It was basically even, but it was the first non-negative month we had since I became mayor. And over the last 5 months, we've seen that trend solidify and continue to increase a little bit to this past month of January. I think the largest increase we had over a prior month in this 5-month stretch. So we feel like we've hit bottom in reference to the income tax decline, and now we're seeing it start to turn around. We're starting to see more jobs and companies come to the city, and the unemployment rate is dropping, and so that all corresponds to the local economy is actually starting to rebound, although not fast enough. It's definitely moving in a positive direction, which we're very excited about. These are items that are either proposed in legislation, announced by the governor in conversations, or speculation from the conversations that have been had. What appears to be the direction that the state is looking at, and when I talk about the state, I could say the governor or the legislature, but essentially we're talking about the state budget, who has to be approved by both sides, the legislature, the Senate, the House, and the governor. What appears to be happening, though, in all the conversations is it looks like it's highly likely that they may be balancing the state's budget on the backs of the local government. It looks like a lot of the issues that they have, they're going to push down to our level. And when that happens, we're either going to have responsibilities to handle things without the funding to go with it, as some will call an unfunded mandate, or they're going to take away funding that we have received in the past to handle things. They'll just take that funding away, and then we're going to have to make up for it on our end. So here's some of the things that have come up in these meetings and these presentations. Obviously, the local government fund is of our utmost concern. We receive about 15% of our overall budget. Our overall revenue comes from the local government fund. That varies slightly from year to year, but that's a pretty big chunk, and easily the second largest source of revenue that we have. We budgeted an expectation of losing about $750,000 from that account. Last year, I think we took in $5.7 million. If the state says we're eliminating the local government fund, we lose $5.7 million now. There has been talk of a complete elimination of that fund come July 1st. There's been talk of a 50% reduction. There's been talk of 15 or 25%. What we all can agree on is it's not going to be less than 15%, and it's not going to be more than 100%. But realistically, that could be $1 million or $2 million, or it could be somewhere in between, or something substantially more. But we need to watch that very closely. And one of the suggestions that the Mayors Associations had, I had a conference call with the Big 8 mayors, which included Columbus, Cincinnati, and Akron, and Youngstown, and so on. We also had actual meetings with mayors from Northeast Ohio and the Summit County mayors, and so on. Was that in virtually every case, including the City of Kansas, the local government fund, 100% of the money that we receive for local government fund goes to the general fund, and for all practical purposes, that money is used for safety forces. And we're looking at potentially earmarking through a resolution or an ordinance from the City Council, earmarking 100% of that local government fund to be used specifically for safety forces. Because it's easy for somebody in Columbus to say, we're just taking a little bit of money away from local governments and they'll figure it out. But if that money is earmarked for, say, policemen and firemen, and they cut our budget, now they're telling the public that they're cutting policemen and firemen from our city if they want to make this cut. And I think that's a little bit more challenging for the legislature to do. And if every city in Ohio does that action, when they start talking about reducing the local government fund, the reality is they're really impacting our safety forces, and we want them to know it at the time they're making the decision, not after. In addition to that, we also have the estate tax. Now, this is one that the leadership of the Republican Party and the leadership of the Democratic Party in the Ohio House and Senate both seem to be in agreement on, that they want to eliminate the estate tax. The way this estate tax works is obviously it's the inheritance tax, the death taxes, whatever you want to call it. When somebody dies and they have an estate that's worth more than, say, $350,000 or more, the tax kicks in. So it doesn't affect the average person. In fact, it affects, from what I was told, less than 1% of the entire Ohio population. Only the wealthiest 1% of our state pays this. But 80% of the dollars that's collected for the estate tax is distributed to the local governments. So the state of Ohio, the legislature, can say, yeah, we're going to make this cut. It has virtually no impact on the overall state budget, but it has a tremendous impact on the local government. So what they're doing by touting that they're cutting taxes using the estate tax is they're giving away the local government's resource and then saying that, see how great we are, we're cutting taxes. If they wanted to cut taxes, they can cut taxes that affect their budget and let us make a determination on whether or not we want to do this locally in our taxes. But this is a big concern of ours because on average we're taking in somewhere in the $800,000 to $850,000 range, and I think a year or two ago we took in $1.2 million. So it could be $600,000 or $700,000, it could be over $1 million. If we average that, say it's $800,000, and they pull the plug on it, that means we've got to rip $800,000 from our budget just because of one act by the legislature. I can also tell you that the legislation that has been proposed, and I think it's House Bill or Senate Bill 3, 1 or 3. It's one of the early proposals they have. They are backdating that to January 1st of this year. So every community has put that in their budget based off past trends, and now the legislature is going to say, hey, you might have to take that out of your budget because we're going to backdate it to that date. And so we're very concerned about it. That's the estate tax. That's what the legislation is. And I can also tell you that I am prepared, and if I can pull it off with my schedule, I'm prepared to go down to Columbus next week, next Wednesday, and testify against this legislation. I've been working with Representative Slesnik, and we're trying to make those arrangements, which also addresses why on earth would we need to actually spend any money traveling, even if it's just $50 for gas to get down to Columbus and back. I think it's extremely important that the mayor of Canton, Ohio, lets the legislature know that we do not want them to reduce a tax that's going to affect us, that could potentially create a situation where we have to lay people off or do something more drastic. So not only am I going to be watching that particular legislation, I'm going to be watching the state budget and the local government fund portion and doing my best to lobby that, partnering with other mayors, and I know that the unions, the police associations, the fire associations, and ASMEs and so on, they're organizing statewide to address these issues as well because it absolutely impacts all of us.